Thanks for joining us for another edition of LYFE Line, living your future every day. I've got my wonderful partners, Monica, Jason, and Jay with me. And today, guys, I just wanted to talk about civility. You know, our last two episodes, you graciously allowed me to do that solo with some amazing people. And we talked about, you know, the civil unrest and the civil injustice that are happening right now. And I kind of wanted to turn to a subject that runs parallel with this, and that is the idea of civility. So I looked it up in the dictionary. So what is civility, right? And the dictionary says it's politeness and courtesy in behavior and speech. Now, Jay, you and I we're wordsmiths. When I say that, now I don't mean to put you on the spot, so it's okay if you go, I don't know. But when I say that, I say civility, you know, it's politeness and it's courtesy in behavior and speech. What's the opposite of that?
Well, uncivility, incivility, hostility, right? You go through a bunch of other antonyms for that. Yeah. But civil discourse is not about discord, right? You're trying to actually make things work together and communicate and listen. And the opposite of civility, it just kills dialogue.
You know, I heard a phrase many years ago, and that was that we should always strive for in our conversations a high clash of ideas, but a low clash of egos. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's really disappointed me, Jason, is the amount of incivility that's going on right now. Right? People have the right to have an opinion. Right? That's America, and I get that. But when you share that opinion in an uncivil or mean way, what goes through your head when you experience that?
Oh, to be candid with you, I haven't heard the word civility used in regular conversation in quite some time. When you mentioned, let's talk about civility, I was thinking, gosh, when was the last time that word came up in any of our political discourse or in any of our business discourse? And so I went on the hunt to try to find a way to frame that thought. And I found something interesting. It says that civility is about disagreeing without disrespect. It's seeking common ground as a starting point for dialogue about differences. It's listening past one's preconceptions, and then it's teaching others to do the same. And I thought about that. Love and then that. I asked myself, does my calendar match that? Like you always say, does your calendar match your goals? And I'm asking, have I been living that as well? I'd like to think I'm good at it, but I tell you this, it's very similar to, it's not enough to just be not something. We now need to be anti those things. I'm going to be anti not civility. And Jay, I know that you're going to kill me on my grammar, but I don't know how else to say it.
I love the thought. I get it.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. And that, by the way, when you're writing, you actually have editors. And so you can say whatever you want and your editor will make you look smart. But Monica, when we're saying all of this, what goes through your head?
You know, I thought about that when I got the text from you yesterday and I went, whoa, I got to look this up because I think I know what it meant. And then I thought about in a coaching world, when you go to a seller's house and they are adamant about their price or they're adamant about how things are going to go on the contract. You know, I've always said, you know, I always say to someone that I know that I'm not going to be in harmony with at first, I respect that. I hear what you're saying. And that builds a trust bridge all of a sudden so that we're on the same level now. I hear what you're saying. I respect that. And can I share this also with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that trust bridge that gets built when you get to their level saying, I hear you. I respect that. Instead of saying, well, that's not right. Well, that's not, you can't do that.
I think that's so smart. And to me, that goes back to something that I always hear Josh Team say, which is let's argue ideas. Let's not argue people. And for me, that kind of frames this, right? It's okay to disagree without disrespect.
Yeah, you can have good ideas and bad ideas without necessarily labeling people good or bad in the process. I think about, Gary, the belief system that you founded the company on, right? It's bookended with, you know, win-win and succeed results through people that both require civility to happen. And right in the middle, there's one called communication, seek first to understand. Yeah. And if we're not curious, if we're not actually listening, which is what part of Jason's definition, and it's part of all of our scripts, feel, felt, found. If you're not listening to the other person, you can't empathize with them. You can't reflect back that they've been heard, and then introduce them to a new idea. So I think, to me, curiosity, seeking first to understand, has to be at the heart of any kind of dialogue that we're going to have that's going to have civility a part of it.
I was going to say, Jay, I heard you say that the other day. Somebody called you and said, what's the script that I should be using to talk about blank? And you said, instead of having a script, I would start with listening and trying to understand.
Gary, I've always said too, you listen, you pause, because you need to think where you're going to go next. And then you reaffirm what they said, you acknowledge what they said, and it's validating what they said. Even if you don't agree with it, it's their perception. And until you get to that point, there's not going to be a civil conversation.
Yeah.
Not acknowledging what they said.
Yeah, that's right. If you don't respect what I'm saying, I'm not going to respect what you're saying. Right. And so all of a sudden, here we are in really a time and an opportunity for a civil rights movement. Right. The civil rights movement of 2020 is what this is going to be known as. But can we really be effective with a civil rights movement when there's so much lack of civility in the discourse? Because Monica, what you're saying, and Jay, what you're saying is totally right. And that is, I really should listen to you before I respond to you. Right. I'm so quick to get out my opinion that I just trample all over yours is what a lot of what's going on feels like, right? Yeah, please shut up as soon as you can, because I'm not listening anyway, because I have something to tell you. And then you go, but you do understand that if you're not going to listen to me, I'm probably not going to listen to you.
Right.
So your very act of not being civil with me could actually cause me to just shut down and not respect you. And the problem is that now we're talking about how we're treating each other in our communications instead of talking about the issue at hand, right? I've got a lot of emails. And I've gotten a decent amount of hate email, just to be candid, for taking a position to respect civil rights. And people want to dogpile and immediately want to make immediately add to the dialogue and make it about more things and more things and more things, right? And I keep coming back to this the simple thought that at a moment in time we should deal with what matters in the moment and respect that, and let the discourse, as we deal with that, let the discourse bring in all the other ideas, which it will, by the way. It absolutely will bring it in. It will not stay on the sideline. To dogpile it all at once most likely means you're not really listening or honoring the moment that's happening. And that's just my thoughts on this. Jay, what do you think?
Well, there's I think a lot of people are approaching this like they're trying to win a debate. And especially on social media, where they don't have to live with these people. It's not like they're talking to their uncle that they're going to see at every holiday for the rest of their life. Yeah. They're treating it like, I'm just going to come in and win this thing. And they're trying to pull out their best zingers like they're on a talk show. Mm. And frankly, we can just do better than that. We're realtors. If you went to a listing table and the seller told you something absolutely divorced from reality, you wouldn't start mocking them. You wouldn't start saying you're crazy, right? You would say, wow, that's interesting. What makes you think that? We would approach that. We have the training to have these conversations. Some of us are just forgetting it when we're walking into this new arena. And I think a lot of it is everybody's afraid of being called a racist. I'll just say it. Even though you may have some racist ideas or have done something that was racist in the past, whether you were aware of it or not, all your good intentions aside, there's so much fear and defensiveness that even if we offend someone, we're not being civil about it. I'll share one last thing and I'll give you the floor, Gary, back. But our friend Meg, who works with us here, she's been a great leader during all of this. She said there's a great thing called the spilt tea test. If I said something to offend you, Gary, right? Think of it like I spilled hot tea on you. I wouldn't start with, well, I didn't mean to spill tea on you, Gary, right? You'd say, oh gosh, Gary, I'm so sorry. And you wouldn't start with, Jay, why did you throw hot tea on me? Right? You might be upset and you're hurt, but if you unintentionally offend someone, let's just think about the spilt tea thing, right? You didn't mean to. You start with an apology.
Yeah.
And then get back into this conversation where we can hear each other again.
Well, the highest level of disrespect is to not show curiosity and listen to what you have to say.
Wow.
And right, it's the highest level of disrespect. And every human being knows this, whether they know it consciously or they know it subconsciously, that they know this. And if we're going to move our lives forward together, right? We're going to have to practice civility, right? The respect of another person's opinion. And oh, by the way, listen to what I said. And that is understanding that is as horrible that you might think of someone else's opinion, that goes both ways. And it goes both ways. And that is, now that I've listened to you, I want to share with you what I think. And that has to go both ways. So you, like you say, Jay, you can't have the tea being spilt both ways, right? You did it, so I'm doing it. So I'm doing it because you did it. And I'm doing it because you did it. And I'm doing it because you did it. And it's going back and forth. And we're not getting anywhere because no one's actually really listening, right?
Gary, there's one other thing too that I think is interesting. People will write in an email or write wherever something that they would never say out loud. Yeah. And we have to really pause and think about before we put something that's hard for someone to read without having more of a conversation. And it's like an attack sometimes.
Yeah. I've always said, at least as a philosophy of getting along with people, is that one, you praise in public and you criticize or you challenge in private. But number two, you never be critical in print. You never attack in print. That you would only do that in person, right? And right now, that's not happening. Mm-hmm. And it's,
there's a couple of lines here that you've been giving over the years that aren't new to this moment that I think apply. Number one, you told me early on, you said, anytime you write something, read it out loud and then ask yourself, is this my voice? And that has served me very, very well. And the other thing you told me was that a healthy family has healthy discourse. And I didn't understand it in my earlier years when you would say it, but as I've grown a little bit, I've started to know just how important that is to having a healthy family.
Well, that's exactly right, Monica? I mean, if we're going to have a positive relationship, it's Pollyannish to believe that we're going to agree on everything. That's just not going to happen. And this idea that then one of us is always right, which means that the other one is always wrong unless you agree with me, right? And that's the only time that we're right, that you're right. That's not healthy. There's a lot of stuff that gets swept under the rug. There's a lot of pent up ill will and harsh feelings, right? Anger.
There's a lot of anger.
Yeah, that comes from not letting somebody fully share what they think or they believe, and know that someone listened and at the very least respected them as a human being, right? That they have the rights to say that. And this goes on both sides of any argument. I mean, I want to be real clear about this, right? The problem is that what is it? I can't hear what you're saying because how you're saying it is too loud. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge. And I mean, we've had to, I can say this, I've personally had to end relationships, end partnerships, end business relationships in the last 90 days. I've had to do it. And at a certain level, it's heartbreaking. And at another level, it's inevitable. And that is when people don't practice the philosophy, do no harm, they're going to purposefully do harm. Mm-hmm. And that's unacceptable to me as a person. I won't accept it. I will. I've been in the face of the bully, and I'm willing to take whatever the bully can throw at me, because I'm not backing down. I don't care what happens. I'm just not doing it. I'm not. And if I've made a mistake and someone calls me on that, I accept that. I mean, I'm more than willing to sit down and listen and try to understand why they believe that. And at the very least, I'm going to respect that they have the right to tell me what they believe, right? And then I'm going to process that and try to come from a place of understanding and respect in how I respond to that. But man, there's a lot of the opposite of that going on right now. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, honestly, I'm just shocked. It's maybe it's good that all this comes out, to be honest. Maybe it's good. Maybe this is what we need. We need a cleansing, and it's going to be and because we're dirty, the water's going to get really muddy, right? Before we can rinse all this away. I don't know. That's what it feels like to me. There's a lot of good out there. There's an amazing amount of good. And if we can practice civility, at least my belief is, then that puts us in a room without guns and knives and social media, right?
Yeah, you can command respect with style and grace. And the interesting thing about the moment right now, Jay and Monica, the uplifting part of this, because I tell you what, if you allow yourself to think about all of the strife, and it can really make your days longer and harder. The uplifting part of this is enough dialogues like this with enough of the right people, and I think you end up with real change.
Yeah, my dad, after he retired, there was an attorney in Houston that a district attorney that was trying to make a name for themselves. And they thought they were onto a big scandal that former school employees had used school facilities, school services, and school employees to do personal work without remunerating the school. Now, my dad, who was a business administrator for the school, was meticulous in his notes and details. And I know for a fact that Dad absolutely did pay, and he recorded it, right? In case anyone ever questioned him, right? He recorded, yes, they came and did this for me, and I paid them and the school, right? Right. And he had permission to do so. But the problem was the attack itself, and the attack in his name appearing in the Houston Chronicle tore my dad apart. I don't know that my dad fully ever recovered from the attack, even though they never did anything, right? They never found anything. They never were able to go other than go on the search and make it public. They were never able to get indictments on anyone because there actually wasn't anything there. Some disgruntled person had made a complaint. They thought it was a deal. They went in. I'm sharing this story only because it robbed my dad of part of his life. The attack, the public attack, the attack in print that went out to a lot of people. It actually harmed my father. And there was no retraction, by the way. Right. There was my dad had no sheet of paper. He had no letter. He had no newspaper article. He had no phone call from anyone that said, Mr. Keller, I know you're almost 70 years old and you devoted your entire life to the school district. And we want to apologize because we didn't find anything. That never happened. My dad never forgot it. And I can tell you that I saw my dad shrink by an inch. Right. I saw his happiness shrink by an inch. And I only use this as more of an analogy in that I immediately go there and I think about what not being civil and not being respectful. Right. And in this case, I'm simply just pointing out that the city and the district attorney could have publicly said, oops, I made a mistake, but then that would have looked bad for them and made it look like they had wasted taxpayer money and all that. So they just went on and didn't do the right thing. And I think that that phrase, do no harm and do the right thing, is really important. So final words on this. Monica, any final thoughts on this? I don't want to beat this up. I just wanted to have a discourse around the idea of being civil with each other.
Just one word: respect. Always respect the other person in front of you, the conversation in front of you. And even if the email is something that kind of sets you back, you've got to respect that that's their perception at that time. And you go forward then. Yeah,
absolutely. Jason, how about you?
I very much like the simplicity of the philosophy of do no harm. I'm not going to improve on that, Gary. I'm going to leave it right there.
Yeah, I agree. Jay, how about you?
Well, I'll go back to a question that I learned from my MAPS coach. When I struggle with these moments, it's a question we can ask ourselves and others: will we rather be right or in a relationship? And a lot of times right now, people are trying to be right instead of choosing the relationship. And it's a simple question. We can help our young people and we can help ourselves.
Now that's profound, actually. The very idea that even though I may not know you, I'm still in a relationship with you. It's called the human race, right? I am still in relationship with you, right? One of the I will say this. Here's my final word, and that is: be respectful of the tribe that you belong to. None of us are an island unto ourselves, which means when we say something, it reflects. When we were kids, it reflected on our parents, right? Yeah. But as we grow older and we begin to create additional tribes in our life, communities that we're a part of, anything that we say or do actually reflects on the people that have associated themselves with us. And then they get judged in some small way or large way by other people through association. Mm-hmm. We all have associations. We all have, we do, from friendships to business relationships to client relationships, right? We have that. And when we say something, we are never speaking for ourselves. No matter how much we would like to argue, these are just my thoughts. They never get to be just your thoughts. And I respect the statement, hey, these are just my thoughts. These are not the thoughts of anyone else. But please understand respectfully that that's the right thing to say. I mean, that is. And I love the statement. I just want to be clear, these are just my thoughts. I also want to point out that we cannot disassociate ourselves from anyone else that we're affiliated with. They get judged in part by the company they keep. At least that's what my parents said, right? You'll be judged by the company you keep. And we all keep company. So I would simply just end by saying, number one, I love the conversation around do no harm and be respectful. Just come from respect, come from curiosity first, right? In other words, respect someone else's opinion and listen to it before you state your own, right? And make sure that in the process of stating yours, that you do it in a civil way, where the other person, instead of getting angry at you, simply says, you know what? I appreciate that you listened to me. Thus, I will listen to you. Exactly. Right?
That's it.
That's it. And then recognize, and the last final word is, and recognize that we all have associations. We all have a community. We all have relationships in the way we conduct ourselves. And right now, during this civil rights movement, and it is a civil rights movement, right? It's been called civil unrest. I get that. There's definitely civil unrest, but we've gone past that quickly. We are really, truly now in a civil rights movement. And for those of us who, and I'll speak for myself, for those of us who now realize that unwittingly, unknowingly, have not stepped out to be anti-racist, this is a humbling moment, that when you really get pushed on it after a while, you go, hang on, I'm a good person. And then you immediately realize no one said you weren't. No one said you weren't, Gary. No one said that. That you felt the pressure because you realized in the moment that you could be more, do more, say more. And you immediately want to defend yourself by saying, hang on now, I'm a good person. Doesn't need to be said. Doesn't need to be said. It's okay. Let's live with the facts as they are in our lives, no matter when anything happens. Listen, try to listen and try to respect and try to help them instead of help yourself. If they're hurting, if there are issues, treat everyone as if they are your brother or your sister, right? Treat them like their family, because I believe at a higher level we are. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to go on record as telling you guys, I just don't understand. And maybe I just don't get it, how we perceive that we're not all part of the same family. I don't get that. Yeah. All right. Well, here's the truth is, and that is time reveals all. Right? So if you believe that your actions today are a moment in time that are forgotten in a second, it's not true. It's not true. We all have the opportunity to move together with our words and our deeds in order to do good in the world and to help other people. And if we put other people first, by the way, and put them ahead of ourselves, boy, it's going to be a beautiful place. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.